Hi, welcome to the Beacon Hill Report with Senator Joan Lovely. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski. Senator, welcome.
Thank you.
And we have a full agenda today, but I have a little surprise for you. Well, it's probably not a surprise to you, but I'm going to let our visitors know this is hot off the press. I don't know if they can see that. It's probably tight, but it says at the very top, Senator Lovely named Assistant Majority Leader. Congratulations. That was Karen Spilka, right?
Yes, President Spilka.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. We just received our assignments yesterday, as a matter of fact, both the House and the Senate. And the Senator elevated me to leadership as one of her assistant majority leaders and also chair of rules, which is a pretty important committee. As we pass legislation, they have to pass through the Rules Committee before they go to Senate Ways and Means. Wow. So just about every bill goes through rules.
Wow. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. I have a question for you about all the committees you're on and all the assignments you have. Busy lady.
It's busy.
So the first thing I want to talk about, there was an article in the paper. I wanted to show the article, but it was about a lady named Bernadette Coughlin. It's the Bernadette Coughlin case that has to do with marijuana and the fact that marijuana is now legal in the state. So can you kind of frame that for us and give us the chief facts on that case?
Sure. So Bernadette Coughlin actually used to be a Peabody resident before she and her husband moved up to the Methuen area, where she worked in a hospital, Holy Family Hospital. She worked in the kitchen, I believe.
Yep.
And so marijuana is now legal recreationally, and Bernadette would use marijuana legally after hours, not on the job.
Right.
And what happened was she fell in the kitchen and she injured herself, and they did a drug test on her, and it came back positive for marijuana, and they fired her.
Yep.
And even though she did not use the marijuana on the job,
right. In other words, her fall was not related to her
at all,
marijuana use, and they fired her. Right.
They fired her.
Right.
So that opens up a whole discussion about using marijuana after hours, off work time.
Just like we might have a drink,
that's correct,
or a glass of wine with dinner, or whatever.
That's correct, and because marijuana stays in the system, or at least detected, maybe not the effects of it, but. But
2 weeks or something like that?
I'm not exactly sure.
Things,
it can stay in your hair, I guess, for some time.
Yeah, right.
Where they can drug test.
Yeah.
But they detected that and they fired her. So this precipitated a bill to file a bill to protect workers like Bernadette who have found themselves. So this is a case of first impression. But we want to be able to protect workers because we have legalized marijuana use in the Commonwealth, and we don't want people who are correctly using it, on their leisure time, to be able to then lose their employment.
Right, just like you might have a drink.
That's correct.
Same sort of situation. Okay.
That's correct.
So I believe Senator Lewis,
yes.
And it's called Bernadette's Bill. Is that correct?
Yeah. It is. So Senator Lewis took on filing the bill, and it puts some protections and exemptions in place for employees, again, who are following the letter of the law and using marijuana. But that it does not affect them because it is still detected. Now, we passed, marijuana to be legal, but what we don't have really in place yet is how do you detect it if you are under the influence at work or driving. So we're still working on that. Frankly.
And this bill does have an exception if a company has to test for marijuana on a normal basis as per the work you do, right? Like truck drivers or something. So then it kind of puts, you can't, right?
Correct. It would not exempt out certain employees who are required under their employment to be drug tested, and that would be like truck drivers and the like. And there's the conflict with the federal government, right? With our federal law, because marijuana marijuana is not allowed at the federal level, and that's the conflict between our federal government and the states that are now legalizing it. And that's something that will be worked out over time, I believe.
Yeah.
But for right now, we're still operating under an existing system and doing the best we can.
Right.
And that's why we have filed. And I have co-sponsored Bernadettes
So
Bill.
right now, it's been filed, but it's got to go through the process.
Correct.
Now, right
We're
now.
at the beginning of our new session. We just finished our 190th
Right.
session, and we just started our 191st. We were sworn in on January 2nd. We just received our committee assignments, and we filed over 6,000 bills. The way the structure is put into place, the first month of January, bills are filed.
Right.
They're on-time bills. And yes, 6,000 bills between the House and Senate got filed.
Yeah. Now explain that. Now, by January 18th, any House bills, in order to guarantee a committee hearing, has to be filed by January 18th. Explain that to us.
So House and Senate bills both have to be filed by that January 18th deadline. That
Right.
it's kind of an arbitrary rule, but it's one that's been in place for
Right.
very, very long time. We are about tradition.
Right.
And although I want people to know that bills can be filed after that date, they're called a late file bill.
Right.
They actually have to go into the Rules Committee before they are then assigned to the Committee of Jurisdiction.
Right.
So
Right.
bills can still be filed, but this is our protocol on how we do it. We file these bills. And then on the House side, the House gives its members and Senate members who want to co-sponsor until the end of January 31st, to co-sponsor bills.
Right.
The Senate, we removed that rule a couple of terms ago because it's too much pressure, frankly, to read 6,000 bills in about, in a 10-day time. It's
Yeah.
impossible, I would say.
Yeah.
And we want to also hear from our constituents.
Sure,
People
yeah.
who may be in favor of a bill, opposed to a bill.
Very
And
limited
so-
amount of time
Correct.
to do
So
that.
the
yeah.
Senate, we removed that requirement, and we've extended it until the time that the bill is
Right.
heard in committee, which could be several weeks to months.
Right. Now, you mentioned that the January 1st was the end of the last session, which was the 190th.
Yes.
And you explained on a previous show that these sessions are what they call general court.
Yep.
It lasts 2 years.
Correct.
So that we're in the 191st, which will last until 2021, right?
That's correct.
1st of
January 1st of 2021.
21, right.
Exactly.
And now I noticed here that you have filed, you yourself, have filed 51 bills.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about some of the bills that you filed a little bit later. And then you also have co-sponsored 55 other bills as well.
Correct.
Okay.
So 51 bills, I filed 51. That's not the high water mark by any means. Some legislators file many, many more. And but those are bills that mostly that I have refiled that did not make it through the last legislative process. So refiled them, sometimes on behalf of constituents, issues that I'm passionate
Okay.
about. And the co-sponsored bills, so I looked at 55. Some of those bills are companion bills to mine that I want to
Okay.
co-sponsor for the representative. Some, again, are, constituents have contacted the office and said, please support this bill.
Yeah. Now, you say 6,000 were filed. Now, how many Congress people do we have? How many legislators do we have?
How many
in Massachusetts?
legislators? So we have 160 representatives and 40
150,
senators.
40.
So 200.
200. So that would be 300, roughly 30 bills per.
Roughly.
Roughly 30 bills.
Yep.
So okay. So are there certain legislators who maybe have filed none, or is it like just a group of people that seem to file things, or how does that?
I would say that people that have been maybe in the building longer may file more. Again, this is driven much by our constituents
Yeah,
who are
right.
asking us to either file bills that are important to them, co-sponsor bills that are important to them. So there are some legislators that have filed more, and if we look at them, probably more often than not, they've been in the legislature for quite some time.
Okay.
Still
All right.
working on issues.
Still-
I'll tell you through the legislative process, and I tell constituents this, I'm very honest that if we file a bill, for the first time, it may not get through for the first session, the first 2 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can take 4, 6, 8, sometimes 10 years.
Yeah.
And that is based on the amount of attention to the bill. Sometimes the bill, what you file, looks very different than what you pass.
Yeah.
So it's it's quite a process.
Well, like for instance, speaking for local access TV, we've tried to get a bill that would require Comcast and other cable companies to broadcast us, local access TV, in high definition, and I think we've done that twice already.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, being in committee or what have you, it's not passed, or it's been tagged on to a larger bill and then lopped off at the
Right.
11th hour. So yeah, sometimes it takes a while to get these
Right,
things.
and we have refiled those bills to continue to work on those as a priority. And I hope to, now in my leadership position, to be able to continue to move these bills.
Yeah. Now, you guys, it says that, what I got from your office, that you debated the rules under which the session will operate. Now, I'm wondering, is that like every time a new session starts, you have this debate, or is this like you throw away everything else and zero base it, or is this additional things that you've brought to the table?
So we review our rules every 2 years.
Yeah.
It is a protocol that we do, and it's actually a good thing to revisit the rules that we operate on every 2 years, and not maybe let 10 or 20 years go by.
Right.
And so the Senate has rules, the House has rules, and then there are joint rules.
Yeah.
So we just went through this process where we looked at our Senate rules, the House looked at their rules, we passed joint rules. There actually is a group that's looking at reconciling the differences between those rules. But what we added in the Senate this year was that we're no longer going to allow non-disclosure agreements for instances of sexual harassment. So you will have seen in the newspaper and in the media that the State House is not immune to claims of sexual harassment. And non-disclosure agreements are signed by the victim and the abuser,
Right, yeah.
so that it doesn't go public. We learned that a lot of victims sign them under duress.
Under duress, yeah.
Right, and maybe accept a settlement under duress.
Yeah.
And so we heard from a lot of people who did not want us to continue. I will tell you, the Senate has not done a non-disclosure agreement in probably 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
So it's not new for us not to allow them. We don't do them anyway.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
we wanted to make sure we memorialized it.
Very interesting, yeah.
Yep.
Now, let's talk about, and you mentioned that you get a lot of feedback from your constituents, and you take it seriously, and you find the feedback invaluable. And I'm sure that a program like this that we do here with you gets the word out, and your constituents see that, and they come to you. It's important.
It's very important. It's critical. In my office, I have a program that tracks everybody who calls in, sends an email. We get a lot of mass emails where some people might be interested in a certain issue. They've signed on to a website that's advocating for that issue. They can fill out a little form, and the email automatically comes to me, to the office, and we know who's interested. We track all of that. We track legislation for our constituents. We want people to know when committee hearings are, so that they're able to either send testimony or come in and testify in person. There's nothing more powerful than to have constituents testify either in person or by letter to let us know how they're feeling about issues. So it's very important to me to make sure that we know. And this is a perfect example of reminding our viewers to please contact me, Representative Paracella, anybody who maybe, if you have relatives in other parts of the state, encourage them to reach out to their government.
Yeah, and I must say that I contact your office from time to time on a regular basis, and I get something back very, 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 very quickly, even if it's something to say, well, we got your message and we're not in the office or whatever. But
we absolutely want to be responsive and make sure that we're following up. And this program is very helpful, and that we have in the office. It's a software program. Everything is all confidential too. I don't want people to feel that if they're contacting the office that we distribute that to anybody. It's not.
Yeah.
We get some sensitive issues that come into the office.
I'm sure you do,
people, housing issues, drug treatment. A lot of unemployment issues that will come in, and we want to make sure that people know that anyone who's contacting the office, it's done with confidentiality.
Confidentiality, yeah.
Yep.
Now, you talked about some of your assignments here. So tell us about your committee assignments for the new legislative session.
So as I said, we just received them yesterday. So
They're more than you.
no. So I've sat on many committees. I'm very excited about this this term. The president has put me again as an assistant majority leader. So kind of the hierarchy of the Senate is you've got the president, you've got the president pro tem, you've got the majority leader, and then the assistant majority leaders. I'm one of those. I'm very pleased to be able to be at the table as decisions are being made. She also put me in charge of rules, which, as I already indicated, is an important committee. A lot of the policy and bills go through the committee. She also put me as vice chair of education, and I'm very excited. I've never sat on the education committee, and we are taking up major education reform this session. We're looking at what we call our foundation budget formula, which no longer works properly between our health insurance costs and costs of different cities and towns. We are hearing from our superintendents, from our educators about we can't do it anymore. We need more resources. We need more support. We're listening, so we're going to be doing that. So I'm very excited to have a seat at the table. To be able to go through that really deep dive.
Yeah.
You know, every community needs a good education system. It drives the economy of a community. If you have good schools, families are going to move in.
That's right.
They're going to support the community. It's just critical.
Yeah. And you have a better educated community, better educated constituents and voters. People are aware of the issues that are going on around them. Now, so tell us what some of your priority bills are for the season. I think you mentioned to me that you have two main kind of categories of bills. Let's start with the first one.
So education, as we're talking about, very important. And one of my passions is to prevent child sexual abuse. It's an issue that the average age when someone reports that they have been sexually abused as a child is 48 years old by the time someone discloses.
Wow.
By then it's too late for them to bring an action on the criminal side. We actually extended the statute of limitations on the civil side until age 55.
Yeah.
We did that in my first term. But for someone who may want to bring a criminal action, it's too late.
Yeah.
So I actually want to remove the statute of limitations to bring a criminal action. Now, I have heard that from the defense side, it'd be like, well, wait a minute, you're going to bring forward an action that's very old, you know, if it happened to a child, you know, especially a young child. But in speaking to some experts, or many experts actually, it's based on the evidence. So if the evidence is stale or it's gone, you can't bring an action.
Yeah.
We're not trying to unfairly pinpoint people, but someone who's 48 years, for example, 48 years old and finally has the courage to bring an action should have that opportunity. So that's something that I'm looking at.
Now you have something called the SHIELD Act.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So the SHIELD Act, and I'll tell you what that means, stopping harm inflicted by the exploitation of life and development. Again, this bill will actually go into education, another reason I'm happy to be sitting on this committee. And it has to do with improper and sexual abuse of students, both in private and public schools. We have seen where sometimes an educator or an employee doesn't necessarily mean it's a teacher, but someone has had an inappropriate relationship with someone underage, and they've, instead of any type of prosecution, the person is usually moved along.
Yeah.
They're asked to leave the school system, but what happens is there's no way to track that, someone goes on to the next school system and it happens again.
Yeah, they call it what, pass the trash?
Pass the trash, yes. It's called pass the trash.
Yeah.
There was just a story, it was a Milton student, and now he's in his 40s. He came forward, but when he was a high school student, there was an inappropriate action with an educator there. So that was back in the 90s. And actually the school admitted to it, and they kept him. And now that student now is going back and saying, wait a minute, this happened to me, and it should not have happened.
Yeah.
So that would stop that action. What we would have the opportunity to do is to make sure that we're not just moving people along. It happens, and so we're going to. It's a refiled bill, and we're going to continue to work with the Education Committee. It was in Education last year to fine tune it. We've worked very closely with the superintendents, with school committees, make people aware. But the action has to stop.
Yeah. Now you also have, as I understand, a second series of bills that seeks to prevent the protect and improve the lives of young people. So, and you have several there among the ones that you mentioned earlier
I
that
do.
you found. So tell us about some of those and some of the highlights of some of those.
So, one of them actually, this just came to my attention in the last month, was anesthesia coverage for children who need dental procedures that are fairly extensive. And I will tell you, my own daughter went through this when she was under 2 years old.
Wow.
She ended up, I didn't know, right? So I'm giving her Kool-Aid or whatever it was at the time. I don't think it was Kool-Aid, but some type of sweetened beverage in her bottle. And it rotted out all her teeth. So she actually had to go in and have her teeth bonded, her baby teeth bonded, because she was still learning to talk, and you need your teeth to learn to talk.
Yeah.
So that was not covered at the time. So that was an out-of-pocket. So but it had to be done under anesthesia because it was so extensive. So this would cover anesthesia coverage for children for those types of dental procedures.
Yeah.
Right now, it's not covered by insurance. We would like to have that covered.
Yeah.
Another bill that we've filed, again, hearing from constituents, this is how we file bills many times, is expanding the access to adoption. So currently, if you're a brother, sister, aunt, or uncle, you cannot adopt a minor relative.
Wow.
And in our kind of non-traditional families that we have now, there may be opportunities where an aunt or an uncle wants to adopt a niece or a nephew.
Right.
Our law doesn't allow it.
Wow.
So we want to be able to expand that.
Rather than going to a total stranger, you could, rather than staying in the family.
Right in the family.
Yeah.
So we've heard from people who want to be able to adopt.
Yeah.
And right now the law doesn't allow it. So this is another one that we filed, again, constituent driven. Another bill is a diaper benefits. So we know that diapers are extremely expensive, and especially for low-income families. They're not covered under SNAP, so that's like food stamps, right?
Yeah.
You can't buy diapers with your SNAP benefits. So you can't buy diapers with your EBT. So we want to make sure that we're setting up some pilot programs for diaper access. There's diaper insecurity, if you will, and it's where parents without means will recycle a disposable diaper.
Yeah.
And it's not good for the child. So we're taking a look at that as well.
Now, Senator, I want to push a little bit further because, and maybe on the future show we can talk about some of this other stuff, but I know we're kind of running low on time.
Okay.
What do you see as the likely subjects of major legislation this session? You have 3 of those, and tell us about those because they're very, very important.
We do. So education we've talked about, absolutely paramount.
Right.
We have to fix our funding formula, how we're funding all of our schools.
Right.
Healthcare costs.
Yeah,
huge.
well, that's a big one, yeah.
Huge. I just went to the physical therapist this morning for some neck therapy. 18 months ago when I saw my therapist, my copay was $20. 18 months.
Yeah.
Today it was $60.
$60.
Tripled in 18 months. We have to get a hold of our costs, especially pharmaceuticals, and that's an area that we're really going to be concentrating on, is the pharmaceuticals. And the third is housing.
Yeah.
The housing is the #1 call that I get in my office now. People are either are in the middle of an eviction, they've just been evicted, they're on a housing list. Housing lists are 10 to 12 years long now because the federal government no longer issues new Section 8 certificates for low income. They turn that program off. There's existing that are still cycling in the program, but there aren't any new ones.
Yeah, and there's that. We have a studio associate here at BevCam who put a bid in on a condo, and he lost it because someone else came in and overbid by $30,000.
Wow.
And you talk about taking the wind out of your sails on that, and I think goes to the issue that you're talking about, that the housing that may be affordable is starting to be pushed up, because that's the housing, that's the area, the dollar value that is most
Correct.
prone. Because $1 million, $2 million houses, you're not going to, right? But
Right.
that's the area where you got your first-time home buyers, your
That's
people that
right.
want to get into a home and sort of move up the chain. So
That's my daughter and her fiance being married in June, would like to be able to purchase their first home. So it's our kids, who are, out of college, paying high college loans, which is, I think, crippling a whole generation of people who are going to, looking for, be able to buy homes.
Yeah.
But, if you have good housing stock, you have a good workforce and you have a strong economy. They
Yeah.
all go together.
yeah. Now you talk about zoning reforms. Now, what specifically, what kind of things are you talking about when we talk about zoning
So
reforms?
you know what, density in the transportation centers. So downtown Beverly, for example,
Yeah,
has
right.
been building apartments
Right.
near the train station.
Yeah.
It's a bit more of a transient population. People want to come. They don't own a car, or they don't want to drive in and out of town to a job. They can jump right on the train. Same
Yeah.
in Salem. So we're looking at trying to create some more density opportunities around transportation centers.
Yeah, the smart growth kind of a
Smart
thing.
growth, exactly.
That we're talking
Get
about.
more cars off the road.
Yeah.
We just, we're looking at, transportation again is one of those key areas that we need to make some major investments. Now look at the Big Dig, for example. It completely changed the way we travel in and through Boston. Came at a very high cost, but it did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah.
We now have to look at the rest of our transportation. If someone's commuting from Beverly to Waltham every day on 128, you're at a 2 or 3 hour commute.
Yeah.
That needs to be fixed.
Yeah, and now that overall the housing supply, though, especially like a community like Beverly, where we've got the ocean on one side, so
Right,
you
yeah, right.
can't go that way. There's a lot of zoning and wetlands and things
Right.
like that. It's almost like you're really fighting an uphill battle there.
Well, that's true. You're absolutely right. It depends on, I think it's community to community to determine how much more dense they want to become, how
Yeah.
much more they want to grow their population. Not everybody wants to be a Boston. So, we've already seen urban sprawl, but we still want to, again, just make sure that people are close to transportation centers so they can get to and from jobs.
Yeah.
We've been still talking about trying to extend the Blue Line to Lynn.
Yeah.
That's a renewed conversation.
Yeah, I know.
and because we've talked about it for decades.
Yeah.
But there's an opportunity to put Blue Line cars, those high transit cars, on train tracks.
Yeah.
So double the use of the train tracks. Don't
Right.
build a whole new system. Let's look at other countries who are,
No, they're far ahead of us. Yeah,
Yep.
the Europeans.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Well, Senator, we are out of time, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to continue this conversation on our next show, and because I think we kind of just very highlighted some of your legislative actions, and some of them I don't think we even got to, but we'd like to do that next time around.
Sounds great.
And I'd like to remind our viewers that you've been watching the Beacon Hill Report with State Senator Joan Lovely. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski, and we'll see you next time.